So, thank you for the invitation for giving this talk. So, first, so let's fix X. C'est complex projective variety, a submanifold, if you want, of CPN. So first, I need to make a definition. What is a holomorphic family of Riemann surfaces over X? It's just a manifold Y, which maps holomorphically onto X, a fibration, if you want, a fibration, so that the fibers are Riemann surfaces. Riemann surfaces of a certain genus. And we ask this family of Riemann surfaces to vary. If the base point is fixed, we ask that this is a varying family of Riemann surfaces. So in the 70s, people in algebraic geometry, they study a lot such objects. And the question was, if X is given and the genus is fixed, how many holomorphic family you can construct? And there is a famous theorem. In fact, this problem is related to Mordell problem somehow. And this problem has been solved by Russian algebraic geometers in the 70s. So a very famous theorem of Parshin and Arakelov tells you that if the base is fixed and the genus is fixed, the genus are fixed and the base are fixed, you have only a finite number of such Y. There exists a finite number of such families. Okay, so even in 2002, Caporazzo proved that if X is itself Riemann surface, this number only depends on the genus of X, not of X itself. So I would like to explain that an improvement somehow of this theorem, that in fact this number, which is finite, do not depend on X, but just on the fundamental group of X. The theorem is the following. This number only depends on the fundamental group of the base. So in principle, X is a complex manifold, so you have plenty of complex manifolds with given fundamental groups. And in fact, the number we get, so it's a slight improvement of this famous theorem, so perhaps not very deep. What is interesting is that the proof involves a group theory. So, sorry?
Also 1G, the genus.
If we fix, okay, we fix the genus of the fiber. Okay, so the idea is to translate this problem in a problem about group theory, and then apply all the machinery we know about asymptotic group theory, and it will solve this question. Okay. So how to translate this problem into a problem of group theory? In principle, it's a pure problem of algebraic geometry, but it involves fundamental group of X. So if you have such a family, you have a holomorphic map from X to a famous space, the moduli space of Riemann surfaces, the space of all Riemann surfaces with given genus, which is, if you want, the quotient of the Teichmüller space by the mapping class group, which is a very important group, which has been studied by a lot of people and with strong recent improvement by, I don't know, people in this room, Bezvina, Fujiwara, and other Sapir, Drutu, and people like this, they explain us how to understand asymptotic geometry of this group. And this is exactly what is needed to make some improvement about this question. Okay, so this map, or the action of the mapping class group of Teichmüller space is discrete. It's not exactly free, but almost free, if you want. This map lifts to something like this, a map from the universal cover of X to the Teichmüller space, and it is equivariant. It is an equivariant map, equivariant for a morphism from the fundamental group to the mapping class group. And this morphism is called the monodromy. If you want, you take a loop and look how the Riemann surface vary around this loop, and this is called the monodromy. So this very important morphism is called the monodromy. So conversely, we can say that a morphism from a group to the mapping class group is a monodromy if we can find a manifold X, so a complex manifold X with this as a fundamental group, and a family with this morphism as a monodrome. So the idea is to study infinite sequences of monodromies. Okay, so in order to do this, I need to give some definition. Among all these families, some play a more important role, somehow one-dimensional families. When the base X is one-dimensional, they are more important than the others. They are less rigid and probably more important because they are less rigid. And so we'll say that this family factorized through a curve. So the family Y factorized through a curve. If we can find a holomorphic map X on some curve B, a curve is just a one-dimensional complex manifold, if you want, Riemann surface, on something, a family over B, such that the family over X is just a pullback. And this family which factorize through curve, they play an important role. Okay. In fact, the first observation is that, of course, in principle, a family is something which is defined over a manifold. But the fact that it factorizes or not through a curve does not really depend on the manifold, just on the monodromy. This is the point. First point is this property only depends on the monodromy. So this is very important. This is easy to prove. So perhaps I explain this proof. So it is exactly the same to say that the family factorized, or that this map, which is a classifying map, if you want, for your family, is of rank 1. If the image of this map is one-dimensional. And okay, so we have equivalence that this map is of rank 1, so that's this big phi, the classifying map, if you want, of your family is of rank 1, and the family factorized. So you have equivalence of phi is of rank 1, and something somehow stupid. Here you have a Keller form which is called the Weil-Petersson metric. Weil-Petersson metric is a Keller form. So it's of rank 1 if and only if the square of this form is 0. So phi star of omega square is 0. And passing to cohomology, this exactly means that the pullback of this cohomology class, the Veith-Peterson cohomology class, which belongs to H4 of the fundamental group is 0. So you have a geometric condition, the family factorized or is of rank 1, and a group theoretic condition, a certain cohomology class is 0. So in fact, if we want to study this sort of object, we must essentially split two cases. Families which come from Riemann surfaces and other families which are more rigid. So basically what one will prove is that if we have an infinite sequence of monodromies like this, different monodromies, then in this infinite sequence, one must factorize through a curve, which is an algebraic property. Okay. This is what one needs to do. Okay. So tableau 1 monté. Okay, so I need some definition now. So we completely forget the manifold X, but just keep its fundamental group. So gamma, its fundamental group, is called what people call a Keller group. The Keller group is a group that you can realize as fundamental group of a Keller manifold or a complex projective manifold if you prefer. It's not exactly the same thing, but almost the same thing. And main examples are surface groups and fundamental groups of two-dimensional orbifolds. So main examples, if you want, are a subgroup of PSL2R, which are lattices. Okay. So exactly in the same way that we can fiber families, we can fiber Keller groups. Co-compact. Yes. This is a sort of main example. It's very difficult to produce other examples than lattices. We'll say that a Keller manifold X fiber if there exists a holomorphic map from X to a Riemann surface with a connected fiber. In fact, such a map, we need to extend slightly the definition to make not a Riemann surface, but a Riemann orbifold. So even for people who know something about complex geometry, even if fibers are connected here, sometimes you have multiple fibers. And when the fiber is multiple, you need to undo this Riemann surface with the structure of an orbifold just by making a special point with the order exactly the multiplicity of the fiber. Okay. And if you do this, what happens is that if you have such a map, if fibers are connected, and something about multiple fibers, then what happens, what will be very useful for us, that these maps, and I need to take the orbifold fundamental group, whatever this means. What is really useful for us is that this map has a finitely generated kernel. this is the most important fact about such morphism from the point of view of group theory. It will be really useful. So conversely, if you have a map from gamma to co-compact lattice in PSL2R with finitely generated group, you can realize this map as such a map. So there is a theorem which is due to several people. So Hsu, Beauville, and other people, and perhaps Carlson, Toledo also, which tell you if gamma is a Keller group, and you have such a morphism, surjective morphism, epimorphism, with finitely generated kernel. And assume you give me x with pi1 of x is equal to gamma, then I can find, then there exists two-dimensional orbifold B with lambda as a fundamental group, on a holomorphic map like this, which realize this epimorphism. Like this. So somehow we want to extend this theorem to families of Riemann surface. Okay, so it's not very difficult to prove that if you give a Keller groups, the number of such objects is finite. Okay. And the number of such objects, gamma being given, the number of lambda like this is fine. So you can make such a complete list. This is the first tool that we will use. The second tool that we will use is the work of Gromov-Schoen, which clarifies a Keller group acting on R trees. So people doing group theory, geometric group theory, they very often have group acting on R trees. They use Rips theory to study group acting on R trees. But in the world of Keller group, life is much easier. In fact, yes, sorry. So we don't really need the important Rips theory. We need the Gromov-Schoen theory, which gives a complete classification of Keller group acting on R trees. So there is a theorem which is basically due to Gromov-Schoen and perhaps other people, because Gromov-Schoen paper is difficult to read, so plenty of people rewrite some of this paper. But okay, the main theorem is in Gromov-Schoen paper. So if gamma is a Keller group, and T an R3, which is acted by gamma, and minimal R3, and gamma acts on T minimally, then we can apply this theorem. And in fact, the Keller group fiber, so there exists a lambda somewhere in PSL2R, lattice, or a two-orbifold group, surjective homomorphism from gamma to lambda, like this, with finitely generated kernel. And an action of lambda on some tree, on the same tree, in fact, if t is minimal. Huh? So an action of a Keller group on a R tree must factorize through a Riemann surface. For instance, if you know that this is very important theorem, it has a lot of consequences, right? If a Keller group acts freely on some R tree, poof, it is a surface group. So you don't really need to use all this Rips theory and so on. So we'll just apply this result with a recent improvement about asymptotic geometry of mapping class. So, in fact, it's not the first time that people apply Gromov-Schoen theorem to study Keller. Basically, to apply this Gromov-Schoen theorem, you just need to produce interesting action of Keller group on trees. So if we open all the books about trees and groups, we can see that we have several methods to make group acting on trees. So we have an algebraic method, which is called Basser theory. So basically, Gromov-Schoen theorem tells you that if a Keller group is an amalgam, it must come from an amalgam structure of a Riemann surface, somehow. You have another very important way to construct a group acting on tree, which is called Brühatitz theory. So Brühatitz theory produces a lot of the action of group on trees. And in fact, in the paper of Gromov-Schoen, they use just Brühatitz theory to prove some super-rigidity theorem about Keller groups. There is a perhaps less well-known method about to make group acting on trees, which is called the Bierry-Neumann-Streben method. And this immediately gives you interesting result. For example, Bierry-Neumann-Streben tells you that instead of a tree, you just can keep a line if you assume that the kernel of the action is not finitely generated. This is also very useful. And the last method for producing action of group on R trees is the asymptotic method. So the asymptotic method, so we have plenty of people concerned in this room, so I try to avoid to miss some names. So the asymptotic method goes back to Thurston in the case of a three-manifold group. Then Morgan Challen writes something about this. I don't know, in the 19th, probably, 80s or 90s. And there is a theorem by a famous theorem by Bezdina and Paulin, which tells you that if you have a group gamma like this and a family of action on hyperbolic spaces, if something happens with this action, then the group must accept in some tree. So I try to recall just this fact and apply this to Keller groups. Okay. So if you have a Hn, Xn, Dn is a sequence of hyperbolic spaces, and a hyperbolic spaces in the sense of Gromov, for example, and a phi n from gamma to the isometry group of Hn with a family of homomorphism, we can make the limit of this sort of object. So in order to do the limit, we need to do the ultra limit. So we think ultra limits is a tool will produce limit of bounded sequences. So from this sequence, one constructs several objects. So the limit space of Hn, Xn, again, which is just a sequence of infinite sequence of point of Hn which remains at a bounded distance from Xn. On this space, we have a natural distance, which is, so we call this H infinity. This is the limit space. And we have two other important tools, which are the stable kernel with the action. So by construction, if a group acts on all these spaces, it will act on the limit space. It's just by limiting of action gives the action on the limit. And we have a stable kernel, which is not exactly the kernel of the action of the group on the limit space. So this is a set, I call this n omega, the set of G, such that phi n of G is 1. This set of integers is a member of your ultrafilter. The stable kernel, and you have the limit group. The limit group, so the group acts, but the action is not very useful. What is important is the limit group. The limit group is a quotient of gamma by this stable kernel. So it has been introduced by Sela in the case where you have a group which acts on a free group. You have homomorphism of a group on a free group. So in the case where all these Hn spaces are just the Cayley graph of a free group. This is the limit group, say gamma omega. And it's always very important to have information on these limit groups. So the limit group acts by construction on the limit space. So the action of gamma on the limit space acts on this limit space. So to get interesting property of the limit group is important. For example, in the Lille theory, what is really important is that this limit group is finitely presented. So under some circumstances, to get finiteness property of this is very important. So here we will have immediately a finiteness property, not directly on the limit group, but something like this. So let me recall the theorem. So theorem, which is due to Bezzina-Paulin, tell you that if Hn is delta n hyperbolic, on delta n goes to 0, then H omega is R3. Okay. So we have interesting action. So if you start, we just will apply this result. So now people understand better this result. It's easier to prove today than 20 years ago, but it's a very important tool to understand groups. So we just will apply this result to Kähler group acting in some hyperbolic space, right? So in practical cases, in fact, Hn is the same space, is fixed, but distance, but dn is the distance of Hn divided by some number, which is called the energy, and the energy is, I don't know, the sup for all S belonging to S, a fixed set of generator of the distance of S xn to xn. And xn is chosen so that xn is chosen so that this sup is minimal. This is what happens. So the theorem, if you have an infinite sequence of a action of a Keller group on some hyperbolic space, and if the energy goes to infinity, then your Keller group will act in some tree. So we can apply exactly what we said before on Keller group acting on trees. So I just apply all this picture together, all this machinery. So Gromov-Schoen plus Bézevina-Paulin, and get a result. So the corollary if you want. So let gamma be a Keller group, and G the isometry group of some hyperbolic space. Phi n from gamma to G, infinite sequence of homomorphism, and with diverging energy. So we can construct a H omega with a limit tree. And of course, gamma acts on this limit tree. So let us assume that H omega is not a line. So it's a true tree. Then we can apply what we said before. Then gamma must fiber. So if you have a manifold X, Keller manifold X with gamma as a fundamental group, it must fiber onto a Riemann surface. So we'll apply this to homomorphism to the mapping class group. And not only we need that X fiber, but we need to descend the homomorphism to G. So we need to understand that this homomorphism from gamma to G soon or less descend to this base. Right? This is the point. So we need to do something more. So here we remember that the kernel on some B. The kernel N is finitely generated. So at this point, we just ask ourselves when this kernel is contained in the stable kernel. So N is finitely generated, and so I don't know, it have 22 generators, something like this. So in order to check that it will factorize, we just have to check for 22 elements if they go to 0 at the limit. So this is a point. It will be much easier to prove that the homomorphism descend from a Riemann surface than if this kernel was not finitely generated. This is the point, right? And here there is a condition. So you have this isometry group on G. So this is called acylindricity of the action of G on H. So this is an important tool. So in study of three manifolds, also Zlil introduces terminology for group acting on trees. Really, it's considered simplified life. When you study group acting on trees, if the action is acylindrical in Zlil sense, life is much easier, right? And we can also extend this definition to isometry group on hyperbolic spaces, right? So acylindrical means that for some constants, if an isometry do not move too much a point, the set of isometry which do not move too much 2 points like this is finite. So if the distance of P on Q is big enough, and the distance of GP and GQ is less than, I don't know, something like the hyperbolicity constant, then G belongs to a finite set. This is the acylindricity constant, acylindricity condition. So if you think a little bit about what it means on the limit, so GQ and Q. If the distance of GP and P, sorry, distance of GP and P and plus distance of GQ and Q is bounded. Something like this. Thank you. Then G belongs to some finite set. So if you go to the limit, this will imply that if you study the limit action of the group on this tree, such a condition exactly tell you that the limit action, a finitely generated group in the kernel, in the stable kernel must be, sorry. So if n is finitely generated on n is contained in the stable kernel, then phi n of this n is finite for some n. So this means that up to finite index subgroup, this phi n factorize through this surface group. So it's exactly what one wants to do for this family of Riemann surfaces. Only difficulty to find the right hyperbolic space on which it acts. So at this point, good news, we have only 2 minutes. At this point, we just can take the Mazur-Minsky space. Mazur-Minsky space is a complex of curves, and Mazur-Minsky, they prove that it is hyperbolic, and Bodic proves that the action of the mapping class group is acylindrical. So we can try to do this, but it does not work. So it does not work because the energy do not go to infinity. So fortunately for us, Bezvina, Fujiwara, so they are somewhere in the room, they improve this space. They construct another space on which is a product of a hyperbolic space. It does not change nothing for our approach. It changes just very little, on which the action has diverging energy. So we replace just Mazur-Minsky space by this Bezvina, Fujiwara, Bromberg space. And it does the job for you. Thank you.
May I ask if there are any questions? Please use the microphone. Are there any questions? I hope I didn't just put you off.
So just one quick question. So you don't use projectivity at the end?
Sorry?
You don't use projective manifold?
No. Keller manifolds. Okay. I mean, what is used from... so at the end, we really have to work much more than what I've indicated, because so this Bezvina, Fujiwara, Bromberg space is not so nice. We need to work a little bit more. But what is really needed is from projective is just Gromov-Schoen theory, and Gromov-Schoen theory is something which is which only use scalar structure, not projective structure.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Okay, well, our Next talk is at 2 p.m. Thank you, let's thank Thomas again.